He wasn't just a household name, he was a cultural fixture. From that boyish smile as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show to becoming a Grammy-winning artist decades later, Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't just grow up on television. He grew up in our living rooms. But what happened on his final night in Costa Rica? Let's just say the official story barely scratches the surface. The headlines called it an accidental drowning. But the whispers, the fragments of insider accounts, and the eerie details from that night paint a picture far more complicated. According to local reports, Warner had been spending quality time with his young daughter, soaking up the tropical peace of Playa Cocles. The beach, known for its postcard-worthy beauty, also hides a dangerous reputation. Unpredictable rip currents that can turn a casual swim into a fight for your life in seconds. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. Some locals remember seeing him walking barefoot along the sand earlier that day, chatting with vendors and posing for the occasional selfie, with fans who recognized him, even under a baseball cap and sunglasses. Hours later, the mood shifted. He was in the water, a strong swimmer, according to friends, when the tide suddenly changed. This is where it gets strange. His daughter never entered the water that evening. Official statements confirm she was on the beach the entire time. Some say Warner waved her back when she tried to join him, as if he sensed something was off. Others suggest it was just a protective instinct, the kind parents get when the ocean feels different. Either way, that decision would become one of the most haunting details of the night. Eyewitnesses claim the rip current appeared almost out of nowhere. No obvious warning signs moments before, and unlike many public beaches, there were no lifeguards on active patrol at the time. That absence is a detail fans can't stop dissecting online. Why was one of the area's most notoriously dangerous beaches left unsupervised during tourist season? Locals have voiced frustration for years about safety funding, being promised but never delivered. The rescue attempts were frantic. Surfers nearby paddled toward him, shouting for help. A visiting doctor, who happened to be vacationing with his family, sprinted into the waves when he saw the commotion. Despite their efforts, Warner was pulled to shore unresponsive. For 45 minutes, CPR was administered, but it wasn't enough. Here's where the narrative takes on a poetic, almost chilling quality. Within hours, Warner's mother, Pamela, posted a heartfelt message on Instagram announcing his passing. In it, she wrote, "He did not suffer. This was his time." To some, those words were a source of comfort. To others, they sounded layered, almost cryptic, especially paired with her later reflection that water birthed him and water carried him home. Whether that's pure maternal poetry or something deeper, fans are still debating. And just when you think that's all there is, trust me, it's only the beginning. If the ocean was the villain that night, the stage was set hours earlier, and not in a way anyone expected. Warner's trip to Costa Rica wasn't just a casual getaway. Friends say he'd been keeping a low profile in recent months, focusing on family and personal projects. He was reportedly homeschooling his daughter while traveling, a detail that adds a bittersweet twist to the events that followed. According to one source close to the family, his wife wasn't on this particular trip. That absence isn't unusual for working couples, but online speculation picked up speed almost instantly. Some fans wondered if Warner was carving out dedicated father-daughter time, free from distractions. Others pointed out that traveling without his spouse may have allowed him to relax in a way he couldn't back home, perhaps even letting his guard down. The day of the incident, Warner and his daughter were spotted by a few locals near a food stand, sharing a meal and laughing. He seemed at ease, maybe even a little nostalgic. Hours later, as the sun began to dip, he decided to take a swim. Eyewitnesses recall him wading into the water alone at first. His daughter, curious, started to follow. That's when he allegedly motioned for her to stay on the shore. Some interpret that as instinct, a parent sensing danger. Others think it could have been something more subtle. Was the water already changing in a way only an experienced swimmer could detect? Or was there a personal reason he wanted a few moments of solitude in the waves? We may never know for sure, but that gesture kept her safe. When the rip current struck, it moved fast. Accounts vary on the exact sequence, but what's consistent is this. A friend who had joined Warner in the water managed to break free. Warner didn't. The current had a hold on him, dragging him further from the shore. This wasn't a matter of skill. People familiar with the beach know that even strong swimmers can lose that battle. Here's the part that fuels the what-if conversations. There was no lifeguard stationed close enough to intervene immediately. Tourists and locals alike have criticized the area's safety measures, with some alleging that promised lifeguard funding hasn't materialized. The rescue that night was improvised, surfers abandoning their boards to paddle toward him, and a doctor vacationing nearby plunging into the water without hesitation. No official rescue equipment, no jet ski, no rapid response team. Just raw human effort against the clock. Despite the chaos, they managed to pull him back to shore. But by then, the situation was critical. CPR began instantly and continued for an agonizing 45 minutes. Every chest compression was a plea against reality, but the tide had already taken what it wanted. And here's where things start to get even murkier, because in the hours after, the story being told publicly didn't match all the whispers floating around privately. By the next morning, the official narrative was set in stone. A tragic accident, nothing more. But that tidy version leaves out one voice, the one person whose job was to always be close, always be watching. Warner's longtime bodyguard, who'd reportedly been with him during multiple tours and high-profile events, has allegedly started speaking off the record. In the details they're sharing, they add a whole new layer. According to whispers from those familiar with the bodyguard's account, Warner had been unusually quiet in the hours leading up to that swim. Not somber, just thoughtful. He'd taken a long walk alone on the beach earlier in the day, something he rarely did without security nearby. The bodyguard allegedly noticed him pausing to watch the horizon for several minutes, as though lost in thought. When the current hit, the bodyguard says it wasn't just a simple pull of the water, it was a violent, unpredictable shove. 1 minute he was fine, the next he was gone, is how one insider summarized it. They claim Warner turned his head toward shore, locking eyes with his daughter, right before a wave crashed over him. Some say he stumbled. Others insist he was already fighting the pull before that. Either way, it happened in seconds. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. The bodyguard's version hints that Warner hesitated to call out. It's unclear whether that was because he didn't want to panic his daughter, or if the force of the water made shouting impossible. By the time surfers realized what was happening, he was already drifting beyond easy reach. That lack of immediate assistance is what has fans fuming. How does a known tourist beach, especially one with a history of strong currents, not have trained rescue staff within sprinting distance? Local news outlets have documented years of frustration from residents who say official warnings exist on paper, but not in practice. Some online commenters have gone so far as to suggest that Warner's celebrity status is the only reason this safety issue is now making headlines. And then came the tributes, each one painting a picture of a man deeply loved and respected. Angela Bassett called him a soulful presence on and off set. Anthony Mackie described their conversations as beautiful, layered, and real. Even Bill Cosby, his TV father, spoke publicly, drawing comparisons to losing his own son, Ennis. That statement, emotional and raw, sent social media into a frenzy. Some found it touching. Others couldn't help but note the complicated history between the two men. The bodyguard's words, though, linger, not because they confirm some dark conspiracy, but because they highlight a truth that feels harder to accept. Warner's final moments weren't marked by chaos or panic. They were marked by stillness, a split second of connection with his daughter, and then a sudden, irreversible pull. But if you think that's the whole story, just wait, because what his mother said next has people asking questions no one's been able to answer. In the days that followed, the tributes didn't stop. But neither did the quiet speculation. Warner's mother, Pamela, became the voice of the family, and the words she chose have been dissected in countless fan threads. She didn't just thank supporters or confirm the timeline. She leaned into imagery, powerful, almost cinematic imagery. He was birthed through water, and he transitioned through water. His mission here was complete. On the surface, it's poetic. But to some listeners, it sounded like something more. The choice of words, mission, complete, sparked theories. Was she speaking in the purely spiritual sense? Or was she hinting at a private struggle he never shared publicly? Friends who knew him best maintained that Warner was in a good place, focused, creative, and committed to his family. Yet online conversations keep circling back to those final 24 hours. Why the solo walk? Why the decision to swim without his daughter when moments earlier they'd been side by side? And why did those closest to him use phrases that feel deliberate, even coded? Meanwhile, Anthony Mackie, Angela Bassett, Raven-Symoné, and countless others painted a portrait of a man who carried deep kindness, intelligence, and a quiet strength. Mackie's post described Warner as someone who listened in a way that made you feel seen. Bassett called him grace personified. These weren't the kind of generic condolences you see after most public losses. They were specific, intimate, almost as if everyone wanted to make sure certain truths about him were recorded before the noise drowned them out. And then there's the bodyguard, still speaking sparingly, but consistently hinting that the public isn't getting the full scope. They've never claimed foul play, but the emphasis on how fast it all happened, the lack of trained responders, and the absence of basic rescue gear has fueled frustration among fans and locals alike. It's not just about Warner. It's about a pattern of preventable dangers that rarely make headlines until a name the world recognizes is attached. In the end, the image that lingers isn't of chaos or confusion. It's of Warner in that last visible moment, meeting his daughter's gaze from the water. A silent exchange, a breath, and then gone from view. Whether that moment was pure chance, instinct, or something he felt deep in his bones, only the two of them will ever truly understand. And that's the thing about the icons we lose. The official story will always be neat, but the real story lives in the spaces between the facts. And those spaces, that's where the truth, whatever it may be, waits. If you've been following the headlines, you've heard the official version, but now you've heard the pieces that don't quite fit. Do you think this was a tragic accident, a moment of fate, or something deeper? Drop your thoughts below, and make sure you're subscribed to Icons Never Die, because we'll keep digging into the untold stories behind the legends, and we're just getting started.